Hi folks, Howard here. Welcome to Complexity Unraveled. If this is your first time on this channel, we cover a wide range of topics from technology, megatrends, business venture, to macroeconomics and social issues. To put it differently, we are interested in topics that are complex in nature and of great relevance in the society. On this channel, no one will ask you to like, share, or subscribe. So please click on nothing, smash nothing, and buy nothing. If you share our interest in this kind of topics, please give us 15 minutes of your attention and we promise to make it worthwhile. The COVID pandemic is unprecedented by any standard. For almost 2 years, it has the entire world wrapped around its little finger. Healthcare, economy, social system, every aspect of our life was turned upside down at some point. The lasting supply chain disruption made us question the true cost of globalization. It was a surreal experience of going into a supermarket and staring at empty shelves. And I'm not gonna talk about toilet papers. Human psyche is truly fascinating. I mean, doesn't it make more sense to first worry about what comes into a human body and only then what comes out of human body? All jokes aside, people like us who live in the developed countries, we rarely think about topics like food security. The United Nations set the goal to eliminate world hunger by 2030. Well, just like the Paris Agreement, we are light years away from what we set out to do. The fact is, more than 2.3 billion people don't have year-round access to secure food supply. That's roughly 30% of the world population. So let's not fool ourselves. Food security is a serious issue. In Europe alone, 14 million people became food insecure during the pandemic. In the US, the number of food insecure households went up from 11% to 15%. Nations are re-evaluating food supply strategy under a new light. Self-sufficiency is the new buzzword. Given this backdrop, vertical farming has somehow burst onto the scene and quite often been labeled as the future of agriculture. With unicorns like Plenty and inFarm rising hundreds of millions of dollars, there is quite a hype around vertical farming. So, is the hype justified? Let's dive into this topic today. But first, in order to avoid any confusion, we need to point out some clear distinctions between vertical farming and a few other farming practices. Let's talk about rooftop farming first. As the name suggested, rooftop farming is a practice of growing farm produce on the top of buildings in urban areas. It's often soil-free, uses hydroponics and aeroponics system for irrigation. Generally speaking, rooftop farming doesn't have a precisely controlled growing environment. It's kind of like moving the farmland to the rooftop, with a few tweaks here and there. With the growing trend of urbanization, rooftop farming is essentially a way to utilize the otherwise often wasted space and provide small amount of fresh farm produce to the local residents. Moving on to the greenhouse farming. I guess most people know exactly what a greenhouse is, so we won't spend too much time on this. A greenhouse is a framed or inflated structure covered with transparent or translucent material. It's a partially controlled growing environment, so things like ventilation, humidity, or temperature can be adjusted to a certain degree. What is vertical farming? Well, to be precise, the name should be something like vertical indoor farming with precision climate control. But for the sake of practicality, we stick with vertical farming. The concept is actually quite simple. Instead of growing on a flat farmland, plants are grown in vertically stacked layers. Vertical farming is typically practiced indoor, in a building or in some cases even inside of containers. Precision climate control is often incorporated to create optimum conditions for the plants. In a greenhouse, growing environment can be adjusted to a certain degree. Vertical farming is all about perfection. Since the entire growing environment is artificially created, from the nutrition-enriched water to the light spectrum of the illumination, even the carbon dioxide concentration, literally every aspect of the contained environment can be adjusted and controlled. Some people may say, isn't that just stacking growing trays in a glorified warehouse? Even though it sounds quite simple, it actually requires a wide range of specialized competencies. To create the perfect condition for the plants, in-depth knowledge of plant biology is essential. And to translate that knowledge into actual growing environment, you will need expertise in areas like HVAC, illumination, and chemistry. Maintaining all the parameters in the optimum range cannot be achieved without advanced sensor technology and data analytics. Automation and robotics, they are indispensable for the profitability and scalability of the business. Last but not least, in order to create plants that are even better suited for the artificial environment, we have to rely on genomics. You see, we live in this day and age that everything is labeled as tech company. But don't be mistaken. The concept of vertical farming is bona fide tech savvy. The team behind this channel shares a common belief. Technology serves no self-purpose. No matter how fascinating they are, ultimately, technologies are tools and means for problem solving. Let's step back from the technology side of vertical farming and look into the other side of the equation. Could vertical farming effectively address any of the food-related problems we are facing? The following arguments are often used to explain why vertical farming is the future of agriculture. First of all, people will need more food because of the growing population. Secondly, people will need more farmland because considerable amount of farmland was lost in the past few decades. The third one is related to consumer behavior and preference. Vertical farm produce is reportedly healthier and tastier in comparison with conventional farm produce. Let's go through this argument together and see whether they hold true. Starting with growing population. In the next 30 years, the world population is estimated to grow from 7.7 billion to 9.8 billion. Compared with the food production level in 2010, by 2050, we will need additional 60% to feed the entire population. This sounds like a solid argument, doesn't it? Well, maybe not so fast. You see, worldwide, 1.3 billion tons of food are wasted in the value chain every year. It might surprise you, but that's more than 30% of the total amount of food available to us. It's quite ironic. While 800 million people are suffering from hunger, almost one-third of the food supply is wasted. If we look at the distribution along the value chain, there is quite striking difference depending on the living standard. In the developed regions, the largest food waste occurs during consumption. The developing regions are the exact opposite. I think we can all agree that minimize the waste would be the low-hanging fruit here. In the developed regions, emphasis could be placed on the optimization of value chain routing and more responsible consumer behavior. For instance, in the US, 40 million tons of food are discarded every year, more than any other nation in the world. As a matter of fact, food waste is the single largest component taking up space inside the landfills. As for the developing regions, agriculture technology is clearly the key. Taking Africa as example, over 35% of the initial food production is lost during the process of harvesting, storage, handling, and distribution. Waste at consumption level in Africa is merely 1%. In addition, simple crop protection could increase the yield of rice by 200%, 130% in the case of corn, and almost 100% for soybean. Even in regions where crop protection is widely applied, there is still in average 30% untapped potential. You see, the increased food demand might not be such a desperate situation if we manage to get the simple things done. But what about vertical farming? By looking at the data, almost 60% of vertical farm harvest is leafy green. You know, those veggies with large, green meaty leaves like lettuce and cabbage. Spicery herbs like basil and mint are also being grown in vertical farms. As you can see, these plants have either high value or a large edible portion. It makes a lot of sense from a commercial perspective. Although we cannot exactly feed 10 billion people with that. In terms of calorie intake, we get roughly 45% from grains. Vegetables in total make up only 3%. And leafy green is nothing but a small fraction of that. This is also well reflected in the global food production. Primary food sources like corn, rice, and wheat are dominating the rankings. Their natural properties make them less suited for vertical farming. For vertical farms, you want to grow plant that is short, has rapid growing cycle, with large edible portion and high water content. Kind of the exact opposite of crops. Even though every bit of farm produce could contribute to the global food production, it's extremely unlikely that vertical farming could have any meaningful impact. How about the disappearing farmland? I don't want to be overdramatic, but the numbers on the surface are quite shocking. We did lose 1/3 of our farmland in the past 40 years. And fertile soil is being lost at a rate of 24 billion tons a year. Does this mean we will soon run out of farmland? Well, let's not jump the gun here. Like always, we like to start with the basics. Roughly 71% of the Earth's surface is covered by water. Forest and pasture cover combined 15%. Urban area, wasteland, mountains and desert, basically the not farmable land, makes up 11%. So you can run the math. Merely 3% of the Earth's surface is being used for agriculture. This is really scary. I mean, how the hell can we support billions of people with only 3% of the planet? Well, this might make you feel a little bit better or worse, depending on how you look at it. You surely remember the discussion we just had on food waste. Despite food scarcity, 1/3 of the production is being wasted. It's getting even more ridiculous here. Even though only 3% of the Earth's surface is used for agriculture, less than 20% of it is used for food. We use 71% of the farmland to grow animal feed, and 11% for industrial use. This might surprise you. 36% of the cereals are fed to the animals. Over 20% are used to make synthetic products like biofuels. The 8 billion people on this planet only consume 43% of the cereal harvest. I mean, who would have thought that the agriculture industry could be so full of surprises? We are talking about the loss of farmland, and at the same time using more than 70% of it to grow animal feed. The insane economy of livestock industry definitely deserves its own video. But a few stats here will make it clear how mind-boggling some of our practices are. 87% of the consumed animal feed is used up in the life-sustaining activities. You know, things keeping animals alive. Simple things like metabolism, respiration, etc. Only 13% of the calorie intake has the potential to turn into meat. For instance, 1 kilogram of beef requires over 15,000 liters of water and 7 kilograms of grain. If we can afford that, I'm not sure farmland shortage is the real issue here. Using 10% of farmland for biofuel industry doesn't make any sense neither. It's generally agreed that first-generation biofuels made from food crops are not the answer to climate change, but part of the problem. Nevertheless, we just keep doing that. More than 15% of corn, almost 25% of sugarcane are made into biofuels globally. In Europe, this industry uses more than half of the rapeseed production. It's a fact that we are losing farmland due to urbanization and environmental degradation. It needs to be addressed. But equally important, we should also address the inefficient, irresponsible, and irrational use of farmland. If we could improve that, even only slightly, we don't really have to worry about running out of farmland for a long time. And in terms of vertical farming in this context, yes, It could add some additional growing capacity, a few thousand square meters per farm, but any meaningful impact would be extremely unlikely. But we are not finished yet. Could increasing awareness of healthy living style justify the hype? Just for a change, we make this one simple, because we believe it's largely perception driven. Since fertilizer is not used in vertical farming, the taste is reportedly much better compared with conventional farming. Consumers could be attracted to vertical farm producers for reasons like better taste, superior freshness, or richness in nutrient. And some of them will be willing to pay 5 to 10 times more for just that. I think this captures the essence of this business idea. In our humble opinion, vertical farming is not the next big thing, and certainly not the future of agriculture in general. With all that being said, it has the potential to address a very specific customer group who are willing to pay extremely high price premium for whatever it's worth. So, who knows? Maybe one day it might even become a highly lucrative niche market. Thank you for sticking around until the very end. We hope this video could be of some help to you. If you are interested in any particular topic, please feel free to drop a comment. Until next time, take care.